Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go over number 3, which was your graded homework assignment. And then we're going to go through the variances and work on a couple problems with those. And I think what I'm going to do, I haven't decided totally yet, is to have your homework, your graded homework assignment due Monday night. And then we can go over that step by step on Wednesday before your test on Friday. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Originally it was due Wednesday night, but I would rather have it due earlier and be able to go through it with you. So I will let you know. So I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to go do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because most of you had it done and had it done correctly. So this is number 3. Okay. This one had food sales of 600,000. And with this one, all of your variables were based only on food sales. Be very careful when you're looking at the problems to see what the percentages are based on, because the one we did before, it was based on total sales. So you had a combination of fixed, again, I put the fixed in blue, variable in red, variable again, just being percentages based on sales. Add them up. Those were our total expenses. Remember, if you have to calculate other sales, you're going to take what you have and divide it by 1 minus whatever this number is. And that will give you the total. And then you just take that, subtract what you already know, and back it off and get your other sale number. To get your net income before taxes, because this one we did not have a tax rate. It's just your total sales minus your expenses. And then if we had a tax rate, this problem did not have a tax rate, but I'm going to just stick one in just to refresh. So let's say that we have taxes of 20%. And so you would take the lowest number possible. So your 20% is going to be based on this number right here. So that would be your income tax, and then your net income. Would just simply be the 169 minus what you just found. So the whole key, and the reason I keep going over that, is that percent, tax percent, is always based on, the lowest number possible. Okay, the very number possible, lowest number possible. Remember, if you're paying income taxes, you don't want to pay it. You want to pay it on your net, not your gross. And that would be if they had taxes. I say that one didn't put taxes on, I just added that on for demonstration purposes only. All right, questions on operations budgets? So we've done several. Some of them we had to do more work to come up with these numbers. And that was using stuff from what we had done before with occupancy and ADR and rooms and all that other stuff. But that stuff is all stuff we did from the previous chapter. And so continues on. All right, questions on this? All right, Oops, I'm gonna stop my share. And then I'm gonna reshare. And we're gonna go on to the variances. And why am I not finding them? Hold on, I had them. Oh, that's not what I want. All right, hold on 1 second. Maybe I can do it from here. All right, hold on 1 second. I gotta go put you guys on. Oh, that's why. Okay. Now I know why. Okay, so we're going to look at variances, and there are 3 types of variances. We're going to look at revenue variances, we're going to look at cost variances, and we're going to look at labor variances. And basically, what you're doing is you're comparing what you were budgeted to do versus what you actually did. When you're talking about revenues, you always want the revenue numbers, your actual revenue numbers, to be higher than your budget. You always want to come out ahead as far as revenues go. And the reason I say that is because when you're doing these variances, so these first ones we're looking at are strictly revenue variances. You only have 4 numbers. You're getting your budgeted volume, so that would either be rooms or meals. Budgeted price would be price per room, price per meal. And then you have your actual. So it's now when you're talking about the price, it's the actual budgeted price per 1 meal. And your actual volume would be your actual number of covers or your actual number of rooms sold. So when you're talking revenue variances, these are the only numbers you have. Be logical. We want actual to be higher because it's revenue. So when you go to your equations, the easy way to remember those is with your revenue, you want your actual to be higher, and whatever the variance is that they're telling you to do, those are the numbers that are in the parentheses, and the budget other is outside. And you can see what I mean right here. So the first thing that sets us off is they look at your total, your budget variance. And that's just the difference between your total actual revenue and your total budgeted revenue. So if it's a revenue thing and you're coming in under your revenue, you might have some explaining to do. So there's 3 of them. First one is your price variance. Since it's price variance, in the parentheses should be your price numbers. Since it's a revenue, we want that to be higher. It goes first. And that's what you have in your parentheses. And then you're always going to multiply it by the budgeted other number that you have, which in this case would be volume. So do the subtraction here first, and then times the budgeted volume. So that's going to be your price variance. So if your actual price is more than your budgeted price, you're going to look pretty good with this one. Your volume variance, that means volume is going to be in the parentheses. Because it's revenue, again, actual goes first because we want that to be higher. And this is going to be the difference in the number of covers or the number of rooms. And then again, you multiply it by whatever the budgeted other is. Price volume variance, you just bring the parentheses down and multiply. That's it. Just bring the parentheses down and multiply. Okay. Questions? Now I'm going to see if I can do this. I don't know if I can or not. Without going back out. Can you see the cost variances?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that worked. All right. So this is the second set. This has to do with cost. And again, it's the cost per one item. So now we're talking about cost. So you're comparing, again, 4 numbers, budgeted volume, actual volume, this I gotta fix. This right here should say volume. I gotta fix that. Oh, hang on a second. I don't know if I can do it right here. No. All right, I'll go back and fix that. So you're going to have budgeted volume, actual volume. Again, those are number of rooms, number of covers. Cost per room and cost per meal. Okay, so that would be your budgeted cost for those. This would be your actual cost for those. Okay, but now we're talking the cost side. So now when you're comparing your actual to your budget, you want to come in under budget because now you're on the cost side. And it's when you go over your cost that you get in trouble. So when we go down to the parentheses, you want to have in your parentheses, your budget goes first because you want that to be higher. And it's the same thing. If it's a cost variance, in the parentheses is cost. Budget first, and then you're going to multiply by budgeted whatever else you have, which in this case is volume. Volume variance, same thing. Parentheses, budget goes first, multiply by your budgeted cost. And then your cost volume variance, again, just bring down the parentheses. Okay, questions on those? So those 2 sets are fairly simple. You have 4 numbers. Revenues, you want your revenue first. You want your actual to be first because you want that to be higher. Cost, we want the cost to be for the budgeted cost to go first because we want to come in under budget. The
now,
labor variance.
Sorry, if the numbers were reversed, where in the case of cost, the actual was higher than the budget, the equations would still be the same.
Your equations would be the same and your result would be a negative number.
Okay.
So,
and conversely on the revenue side, that
exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
I just want to make sure that the method of the equation formulas are the same regardless
It's exactly the same. It would just determine whether you came out with a positive or a negative number.
of, okay.
And in most cases, like when you're talking about costs, if you come out with a negative number, when you're talking this cost variance, it means that you're over cost. So it's an unfavorable variance. Same with volume. If you come out, you know, if you're budgeted, it's so with your volume, if you're coming out with more, that's going to
But
be
it
a
depends
good.
upon the context. If the revenues are greatly increased, then your costs should be higher than what you
Exactly.
had budgeted.
Right.
So it
And
might
so
be
that's
fine to see that negative variance on the cost side.
right. And that's why when you're doing the variances, to truly do a good study of all the variances, you have to do them all, because that's exactly what happens. You look just at the cost variance and don't look at the fact that you sold more rooms or you sold more covers. Well, of course your costs are going to be higher. Labor variances are probably the most important one. And of course, that makes them harder. So with labor variances, we're going to throw in a fifth number. So let's talk about this stuff first. So now we're dealing with labor. So we're dealing with wages, and we're dealing with hours, and we're dealing with hourly rates. And so some of the variances that you're going to do are exactly the same. So some of these you're going to have to figure out what hourly rates are. Just remember, if you're given a total for your wages, that includes the hours times the rate. So they always give you enough information you can figure out the missing piece. So budgeted rate would be your budgeted wage rate per hour. Budgeted time would be the total hours budgeted. Actual rate would be your actual hourly rate, and your actual time would be your actual time that you were spent. And then we throw in this ATAO, allowable time for actual output. And we have to calculate this. So, for example, if we're talking about rooms, they're going to have a standard period of time that you should use to clean every room. That's your standard. If you're talking a restaurant, you should serve a certain number of covers per hour. That's your standard. What you do with this ATAO is you calculate the number of hours, if we're talking about rooms, that you should have spent based on your actual rooms sold. So for example, oh, I think I even have a little example down here. If you are allotted 30 minutes to clean a room, and let's say the employee cleaned 7 rooms, then they should spend 3.5 hours on those rooms, because that's your standard. If this is your standard and they cleaned 7 rooms, but they spent 4 hours in total on those rooms, okay, then they're not adhering to the standard, and it's going to come up with a negative number. And it's going to say, okay, if it took you 4 hours and it should have taken you 3.5, you weren't efficient. And so these variances, in my eyes, are the ones that either save you because you've gone over budget, or they point out you're not efficient. So these are the variances that you have with labor. Volume variance is going to be a little different. Budgeted time, budgeted hours, that you are allotted, but you're going to subtract your ATAO after you find it. So this is the time you should have spent, or this is the time you were budgeted to spend. This is the time you should have spent based on the number of rooms sold or covers sold. And then you're going to multiply that by your budgeted rate. This one, I think, is the most important one out of all of the ratios or the variances that we do. And that's your efficiency variance. So this is your ATAO. This is the time you should have spent based on your volume sold minus your actual time. So if you can come out ahead here, you're going to look pretty good. And then again, the budgeted rate is on the outside. So up here are the rest of them. The rate variance up here, this one follows the general rules that we did before. Budgeted rate, actual rate in the parentheses, times your budgeted time. And then this one also, just your time in one parentheses, your rates in the other. And then I say these two down here are different. These are different than the rest of the pattern that you do. And that's all of them. Okay, that's all of them. Are there any questions? Okay, I thought we could go play with a few. So let me get out of here. Let me get back to an Excel sheet. We'll use that one. We'll put on another sheet. All right. So I thought we could look at number. I have two picked here. Let me just see which one I want to do first. Okay, number 19 we're going to do first. So page 535. And with these, write down the information you have. And I always do like a little chart. And it makes it easier when you're going to go do the variances. Because if you fill in your little chart, you got all the numbers that you need. So with this one, it's good because we're going to do rooms. So we're going to do our revenue variances. And then we're also going to do labor variances. Unfortunately, there are very few problems that have the cost variances in there. I think there's actually only one, and you're getting that one for your graded homework. But the cost variance is pretty simple. Just remember it's cost per one when you do those. All right, is everybody on page 535? This is 10-19. And this is Holly's Hotel. Okay, so there's no set way to set these up. I probably don't do them the same way every time, but so I'm going to put my budget first, and then my actual. So we're dealing with revenues this time. So we're budgeted to sell rooms of 800. Price per room, it's a classy hotel, is $18.50. Okay. And that's what they give us. Okay, so we're talking revenues here. Let me just stick that up here. So our budget would be the number of rooms times the price per room. Okay, that's our budget for the week. And then they give us information to calculate the actual. They said the actual price is 10% higher. So we're going to take the budgeted price and we're going to multiply by 1.1. Because this is like doing your naive method that we did back in the previous chapter. So our new price will be $20.35. Everybody okay with that? Because it's 10% higher. Yes? Okay. All right, they tell us, let's do that wrong. They tell us that the actual rooms sold were 10% less. So we're going to take what was budgeted and we're going to multiply by, I'll do it this way. 1 minus 10%. You don't have to do it this way. I'm just trying to write it all out. Okay, so we only sold 720 rooms. So we're going to multiply to see if the fact that the price was higher will make up for the fact that we sold less rooms. And it doesn't. Okay. All right, is everybody okay with those numbers? Yes, no?
I'm sorry, how do we get the 20.35?
Okay. So it tells you that if you look up here in my formula, that the actual price is 10% more. So this is going back to your naive method from the previous chapter. So you're going to bump up the 1850 and you're going to multiply by 1.1, which is going to bump it up by 10%.
Okay.
And then with the revenue, it's 10% less. So then I multiplied by 1 minus the 10%. So it's basically 90% of what it was supposed to be.
Gotcha.
All right, so we know we're in trouble because our actual is less than our budget. So we have a budget variance and since we want the actual to be higher, I'm going to take the actual, subtract off the budget. And we have a budget variance of 148. Okay, so and this is what you start with. So going forward to do all the variances, I've got all my numbers. Here's my budgeted volume, actual volume, budgeted price, actual price. And then because they're revenue variances, I just gotta go throw them into the formulas. So if we do the volume one first. I know that in my parentheses, I'm going to take, because I want the actual to be higher. So I'm going to take that number. Okay. And I'm going to subtract this number. Now, you know what? Hang on, let me do it a different way. Let me write it out. So we're going to take the 2035 and we're going to subtract the 1850. Oh, wait a minute. Here I tell you, and then I do it wrong. We're doing volume. Somebody should have corrected me. Okay, we're doing volume. So we're doing these two numbers right here. So in the parentheses is volume. Because it's revenue, we want the actual to be higher, so it goes first. Minus the budget. And then what we do is we multiply it by the budgeted other, which in this case is price. So that's what we would do to find the number. Okay, is everybody okay with that? So that we would have a negative $1,480. Price variance in the parentheses is going to be the price. Again, we want the actual to be higher. Because we're revenues. And then what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that by the budgeted whatever else we had, which was the 800 rooms, the volume. Okay, so that's your volume variance or price variance. And that didn't work. What did I type wrong? Oh, 35. And that came out to be a positive 1480. Okay, so they kind of wipe each other out, but we still came out under budget. And then you have your volume price variance. And so you simply bring down the parentheses. So it would be the 720 minus 800 times 20.35 minus the 1850. Okay. And look at that. Now, you're going to see with your cost variance and your revenue variance, these should add up to this. With the labor variance, it's more difficult to make that happen. So I don't even try, because things don't just, it's not just a simple add subtract. All right, questions? Okay. Then we're going to go down to the second part of that, which is doing the labor ones for the same business. So now we have the budgeted and the actual. But now we're dealing with hours and hourly rate. So they tell us that we are budgeted for 400 hours. Actual hours were 380. Oh, so it came in good there. The estimated wage is $4. And the total we spent was that. And so that's what I mean about filling in a little chart, because then you can go back and fill in the blanks. So if they were budgeted for 400 hours at $4 an hour, our total budget would be found just by simply multiplying those two and getting $1,600. Okay. So we look pretty good, right? We are under budget. $156 under budget. So we're singing. We're thinking we're doing a great job. Let's go figure out what our hourly rate is. How would I do that? How would I do that?
$14.44 divided by the 380.
So here again, we look good. Less hours, less hourly rate. So we think we're doing a great job. But now let's go see if we really did. So with labor, we're throwing in that extra ATAO. So look at the information you have. They didn't give us a standard. Or did they give us a standard? Can anyone try and figure out what the standard would be based on the information we have? What do you think? Any guesses?
The budgeted rooms divided by the budgeted hours.
Correct.
Or the budgeted hour, yeah.
So we're budgeted to sell 800 rooms. And to clean those 800 rooms, we were given 400 hours. So that our ATAO is that we are supposed to be cleaning 2 rooms per hour. Okay, 2 rooms per hour. All right, so we got to use a combination of stuff from up here and down here. So if ours is, our rate is 2, we need to figure out what our ATAO is. So that's the standard. And our ATAO is going to be the 720 rooms that we sold divided by the standard. How many hours should we have spent? Should have spent 360 hours. So if I look at what I actually spent versus what I was supposed to spend, even though we're under budget, we're not efficient. And we're going to show that with the variances. So first, let's do the rate variance. This one is your standard. So in the parentheses would be your rate. But because this is an expense, we want the budget to be first because we want that to be higher. And then we would multiply that by our budgeted other, which would be our hours. So with our rate variance, okay, rate variance, we did okay. Let's go to our volume variance. And with this one, in the parentheses, it's going to be our ATAO, which is 360. Oh yeah, we'll go one. Our 400 goes first minus the 360. Okay, so our volume, that would be our hours in this case. So budgeted hours minus our ATAO. And then we're going to multiply that by our rate, our budgeted rate. So our volume variance, yeah, we're okay there too. And then this is the big one right here. We want to know how efficient we were. So in your parentheses is your ATAO minus your actual. And then it's going to be times your budgeted other, which in this case is your hourly rate. Okay, so we're not efficient, not efficient. Even though we came in under budget, we're not efficient. And then this other one, instead of volume, I'm gonna change that to time. Makes more sense. Would be your rates. Times your time. Okay, so with that one, okay, in this case, that actually did. So you can't add these up and get this, because like with this one, you'd have to manipulate, blah, blah, blah. But you can see how it kind of comes out. But those are your labor ones. Those are the harder ones. Okay, so I'm gonna give you like 3 to practice, because I didn't get as far as I wanted. Okay, so for homework for Monday. Okay, for Monday, practice these. 8, 17, and 18. 8, 17, and 18. Questions? Okay, I'm going to stop recording.